G'day, how are we going? Firstly, spoiler warning. Secondly, some of the footage, most notably the cutscenes, are taken from a couple of YouTube channels, so IGN, Survival Horror Network, and Gamers Little Playground. That's just due to a bit of laziness on my part. Thirdly, I don't think Bloober's remake of Silent Hill 2 is bad. I had fun with it and would happily recommend it to people. I also don't have any nostalgia for the original game, given I only finished it for the first time back in October. I just need to get that out of the way because I don't want someone to get the wrong idea on how I feel about this game based purely on the video's title and or thumbnail and thinking that maybe I just have nostalgia for the older titles. Bloober did a great job. There's excellent audio design, the voice acting is magnitudes better, the environments look wonderful, though the original was definitely no slouch. There's a bunch to praise, and the reason I'm not delving into it is because I don't want to make a full review or anything. I just found that during my time with the remake, there were some noticeably worse aspects that really shouldn't have been present given the foundation was already laid with the original game. Some additions work well, others detract from the overall experience. So let's get into it. Performance and graphics. This will be a quick section. Graphically, of course, the game looks beautiful. High resolution textures, great fog, etc. My issues on this topic are weird ghosting issues against the fog when you turn in your camera, shadows on characters' faces not working properly in cutscenes, and performance can sometimes be quite bad. Stutters are mostly guaranteed when it comes to Unreal Engine games, and the frame rate at times drops below 60. I have an RTX 4090 and a 5800X 3D CPU, and whilst playing at 4K with DLSS set to performance, I still had a few areas that dropped frames quite low. Bloat and padding. When playing the original, I was already feeling the longer runtime compared to the first game. For me, it was the lack of enemy variety, boring bosses, and bad combat that made me want to just run past enemies, and doing so kind of highlighted how sparse the game is with interesting gameplay elements. The puzzles are great, and I enjoyed reading some of the extra lore that you can pick up, but overall I could have done with a shorter game. The remake says fuck that and doubles the length of the game whilst tripling the number of enemies. I was still in the apartment when I got an achievement for killing 75 enemies in melee, and that really said a lot. Look at my status screens between the original and the remake. Remake is a little less than double the length, and I went from a total of 114 kills for the original to 313. At the start of the game, I didn't mind Bloober adding more areas to enter in the town. I felt like that added a good way to become more familiar with the streets and sort of soak in the town as a whole, not only for the sake of this game, but also if they were to remake 1 and 3. Areas from original 2 are reused in 3, so I don't think it's a crazy idea that this town as it exists will be seen again, with different areas opening up in later entries. Beyond the first couple of hours though, I found that any extensions of existing levels didn't add to the experience. The scenes with Maria in the garden and the bar are great, I'll give Bloober that, but things like the labyrinth now having 3 entire areas to walk to the end of when it only needed 1, the hospital taking more than twice as long to get through, same with the prison. It just makes you want to start running past everything much earlier and in general ruins the pacing of the game. It's not as easy to ignore enemies this time around as well due to the game being seamless, so now you'll actually be followed through doors. Combat is at least more enjoyable, but it's not like we've been given an in-depth hack and slash system that needs time to learn and master. Not that I want that, mind you. I'm just pointing out that we still don't have much, so it gets old much more quickly and with even more time needed to get to the end. And some of those extended sections only require you to navigate some rooms to pick up a couple of items. It's not like there are clever environmental puzzles in the way or anything. Just walls to shimmy through, boxes to move from one wall to the other. So much of it feels like just a waste of time. The Otherworld. What I love about each of the numbered entries in the series is that Team Silent was not content with repeating themselves, especially when it came to the visual design of the Otherworld or Nightmare World. 1 and 3 are similar, but that's due to the same character of Alessa being involved and her projections coming through. With The Room, the worlds come from the kid form of the antagonist, which is why you have things like a nonsensical layout in the city level, which I think is meant to represent the kid's confusion as he tries to make his way back to the room. With the tower level, I figured it seemed like a prison and impossibly tall because Walter had no proper perspective of the outside world and viewed the tower as an inescapable prison. With original Silent Hill 2, the Otherworld areas seem dilapidated. I get a sense of neglect and abandonment throughout the game, which goes very much hand in hand with James as a character and his story. The remake does keep that look sometimes, but it also uses a lot of the rusted aesthetic of 1 and 3, and it's not just the color scheme, it's also some of the objects look like objects that are used in those games. You lose a bit of that uniqueness that Team Silent strived for. I wonder if Bloober saw it as a piece of identity that had to be part of the game, much the same way Homecoming reuses the rusted design. At least with this game though, Pyramid Head is actually meant to be here. Gamified Elements. What do I mean by that? Playing the original 4 games, I came to really appreciate how immersive they try to be with no HUD elements. You're kept sort of in the game world at most times. You do have to access your menu a fair bit because none of the games had dedicated buttons for healing and such. Even items in the world aren't highlighted. Instead, if you haven't spotted something yourself, your character will turn their head to look at things that can actually be interacted with. The remake allows you to completely turn off all HUD elements and has dedicated buttons so that you never have to enter a menu outside of a few specific circumstances. So, great, immersion is even better for this reason, and you still have the turning of the head. What takes me out of this immersion are the following. Pressing E to reach your hand into a wall, then pressing it again to reach further, then pressing it again to reach further again. Does anything bad ever happen? No. Can you progress without reaching in? No. Is it meant to invoke some tension? Because I can't progress without doing it, and it's out of my control if something does happen, which it doesn't, so why am I forced to press the button multiple times? This happens for the multiple instances you have to jump down a hole too. A big highlight of Original 2 for me was walking through some hallways with Maria and having Pyramid Head just show up and start chasing us. No music, no stupid sound effects, no change in the normal camera. It's a brilliant moment. Not in the remake though. Now the game has to tell us that we're entering chase mode as we slowly run behind Maria, only to teleport in front of her for the cutscene. There is just no comparison here. And speaking of, cutscenes. I only have a few cutscenes that I found to be unquestionably better in the original game. The Anyway scene. Remake for some reason instantly cuts from James saying, "Glad you're safe," to Maria's outburst.
Anyway, I'm glad you're alive.
Anyway? What do you mean, anyway?
So that's jarring enough as it is, but the original shows us Maria's face as annoyance with James turns into anger, and it quickly festers as she then lets loose on him.
Anyway, I'm glad you're alive.
Anyway? What do you mean, anyway? You don't sound very happy to see me. I was almost killed back there.
We also get to see James look away like a scolded puppy, a response to anger he's likely had many times from Mary's own outbursts while she was sick. In Remake, we don't get to see the same reaction from James. Then you've got the difference in delivery. I can't tell if Remake Maria sounds overly theatrical or it's just plain overacting.
Anyway? What do you mean, anyway? Anyway? What do you mean, anyway? I was almost killed back there. I have never been so scared in my whole life. All you care about is that dead wife of yours.
You don't sound very happy to see me. I was almost killed back there. Why didn't you try to save me? All you care about is that dead wife of yours. I've never been so scared in my whole life.
Monica Horgan's delivery in the original is so convincing, and you can really hear that genuine anger. With the chase scene, I've already spoken about how I don't like the more gamified approach, but with the cutscene of James trying to keep the elevator doors open, there is just way less intensity in the remake versus how much more desperate they both are in the original. Even the way the camera moves adds a lot, whereas it's so static and passive in the remake. After Maria is stabbed, James looks so much more defeated in the original. With the prison scene, the first thing of note is that lighting is drastically different, so much so it changes the whole mood of the scene. And then you've got more bad delivery. In the original, we have Maria talking to James as Mary.
You were always so forgetful. Remember that time in the hotel?
James is so confused about who he's talking to that he has to ask.
How do you know about that? Aren't you Maria?
Upon asking, Maria hits him with,
I'm not your Mary.
you can almost taste the venom in that delivery. Then we get an immediate switch to the more flirtatious side of Maria, and it becomes a little bit more flirty for the rest of the scene.
So, you're Maria?
I am. If you want me to be.
All I want from you is an answer.
It doesn't matter who I am. I'm here for you, James. See? I'm real.
It's terrific, and it has some great acting from Monica, versus the remake scene being more like a first-time table read.
Don't you remember?
James? Honey? Did something happen to you? After we got separated in that long hallway? Are you confusing me with someone else?
It's so much more flat. And it's not as if Bloober went through the effort of making scenes worse across the board or anything. Within this very scene, we get a great moment of James having his face being touched, and the facial animation gets to shine as this touch-starved man has to go through the confusion of finally receiving some affection from someone, and that someone is a person who is basically almost his late wife. That torment and confusion would have been so much better had we just witnessed the changes in personality as Maria channels Mary and uses her memories. The final scene I want to talk about is, well, the final scene. I'm going to bugger up this pronunciation for the actress, but I think Salome's acting as Maria/Mary in the remake for the bed and letter scene are really good. But it's one particular part of the letter scene that Monica absolutely nails, and that's where she starts to break down and cry.
I am so sorry for what I did to you. Did to us. You've given me so much, and I haven't been able to return a single thing.
Hearing Mary still hold some of the blame for something totally out of her control is heartbreaking. And that last "you made me happy" hits so goddamn hard because of Monica's delivery.
James, you made me happy.
And like I said, Salome's acting is good.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. I told you. I wanted the pain to end.
And I recommend looking up the stillness ending for the game as well, because that is just a really well done scene. Some great acting in such a short time. But I don't think we really gain anything with this new direction. Instead, we get a worse interpretation of a very sad but beautiful and memorable scene.
I want you to live. For yourself. And for others. Like you did for me. James. You made me happy.
I'm sure people much more familiar with the series and much better than me at analyzing things can make a better argument for either game, really, but that's all that I want to share. Like I said, Bloober's Remake isn't a bad game at all, and I still am keen for more potential Silent Hill remakes, especially The Room. I think by spending some time on the negatives of that game, there is a real gem waiting to be played there. Until the next video, have a good one.